So this is my review of my 2021 Polaris Sportsman 570 Trail Edition. Let's just talk about what items are not stock. That light bar there in the center, I bought that aftermarket. I also put in LED bulbs to replace the ugly, dull, yellow halogen bulbs that it came with. I did buy the hand guards and the mirrors. And then, as a surprise, my mother and sister shipped a rear rack extender to me. When they seemed to be out of stock everywhere, they managed to find one and shipped it to me as a surprise. So here's a picture of it bone stock. Now back to the review. So I'm going to do a loves and hates. I'm going to start with the hates. And spoiler alert, there are more loves than there are hates. So let's do the hates. So let's start off right up front. As I mentioned, these headlights, both the main headlights and the pod are yellow halogens. I mean, they're not deliberately yellow, but they're halogen bulbs that appear yellow. They're kind of dull, in all honesty. Certainly not very bright, so I immediately swapped those out with some LEDs. I got it from AK Off-Road. There's a kit you can get. You get the bulbs for all three lights, the two headlights and the pod, and then included is a light bar. So that's what I got there. Also, I decided to put the light bar up here on top of the front brush guard. I like it there better. It's a little up higher and it doesn't interfere with the radiator at all. And also there's like a blank spot right here anyway. So I decided to put it there, and you could tell it just fills in that spot pretty nicely. So let's get back to the hates. Hate number 2. Take a look at this front storage. They call it dry. It's not dry. That's thing number 1. But look at how incredibly flimsy this is. I mean, you just touch it, it rocks all over the place. Why is that? Well, it's held on with these wires, cables, which maybe they're pretty tough, maybe they're not. But then right here, there are these rubber bands that hold the front piece together. I mean, literally bits of rubber band. I mean, it's like, you know, why? Secondly, again, they call this dry storage. You probably can't see here, especially with the sun glare, but there's a massive gap right in here, okay? So what happens is you're riding along, you hit a big puddle, the water comes up and over, hits you on the pod light, which is fine, hits this section, and then once it hits there, nice sound that just made, I probably broke something just opening it, but anyway, once the water and mud hits here, it flows right down onto the battery, and you can see all that mud all over the battery. And this is after I cleaned it all, and maybe that's just fine, who knows, but I'm not pleased with the storage. Okay, on to the next item that we're all well aware of, and that has to do with the belt box exhaust. So as you know, this section from here back is what it came standard with, and essentially this points right back here, and this big back tire, as it spins and all the water and mud and small pebbles and maybe even snow get right in this belt box. I mean, you can see the orientation here. I mean, the opening would be right there. Here's the tire spinning around, chucking a bunch of stuff up. Now, I've done a mod myself, as you can see. That's in a separate video, so go to my channel, take a look at the belt box exhaust mod that I have, and it'll explain it in a little more detail. Second item, though, while I'm back here, is if you recall on other Polaris quads, right in here is like a toolbox or a small storage chest that you would access even from either from the top or from the back. They took it out and they put nothing there. So they did a delete and not a swap. For me, it worked out because you could see what I did here to run that exhaust over so that junk wouldn't get in it. So then also the intake. Let me just take the seat off for a second. So the intake for the belt box is right in there. And if you could just make out that metal piece behind this wire, right at the top of that is the intake for the belt box. Okay, it's not very high, and you can see all this mud on the inside of the plastics from this. I mean, there's the exhaust, the tires back there. All this mud travels through from that back tire or even splashes from the front, and just at the very top of that piece of metal is the top of the intake. So all that junk goes right in there. That's another hate. Put the seat back on. Okay, next hate. This screen right here, I like it a lot. It's got good information. There's actually 3 versions of this screen. One is called buttonless, where you don't have these buttons, and instead you control it via this yellow button. That's the least expensive version, I guess you would call it. The next one up is what I have, which has buttons, so you can control the screen from here or from here. What it lacks is Bluetooth connectivity. The next version up looks exactly like this, but it has Bluetooth. Now, I don't, need super important phone calls all the time, but I keep my phone inside of my bag or my pocket. And if I got a call or a text, I wouldn't mind knowing. I mean, everything is Bluetooth these days. So on this $9,000 beautiful Trail Edition, they give you this one, this head-up display, well, not head-up display, but you know what I mean, command display, with no Bluetooth. Even though they offer it on other models, that costs less. Don't understand that at all. Okay, let's go into the loves now. That's enough of hating on it. My first love right off the bat is I think it looks gorgeous. It's made in America right here by Americans. Top selling company, company that sells the most quads or ATVs. When that happens, you have a lot of aftermarket accessories, you have a lot of different dealers, you have a lot of techs that can fix them, etc. It's part of the equation. It isn't the only reason by any means, but I think it looks wonderful. So far, I'm pretty pleased with it. I really like, personally, the wheels and tires that it comes with. I know a lot of guys and gals, first thing they upgrade is the wheels or the tires or both. I'm content for now. I mean, the wheels are nice enough looking for me, decent size. The tires are very grippy. I've had it in mud. I've had it on the trails. It seemed to work fine. I was pleased. Another thing I love is the all-wheel drive system. I think works extremely well. I mean, it's very simple. You put it in 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, or 4x4 downhill descent mode. I haven't used that yet. Obviously, I've used 4x4 an awful lot, and 2x4 when I'm just riding around my property. But that's it. Some of these other manufacturers of quads have a really weird setup here. Like you flip a switch over, you press a button, you pat the top of your head, you spin around 3 times, and then the front diff is locked and you're in 4-wheel drive. In this one, you just do this. Ready? Done. And it works well too. I've had it in mud and water. I don't sink this machine. It's not a submarine for me. I mean, I like a lot of the folks out there. I love their videos. I love what they do. It's just not me. So 4-wheel drive on the trails through puddles and some mud works great. No problems. Another love for me, pardon the helicopter going overhead, is came with the winch. It's a 2,500 pounder. That's plenty for me. I mean, the machine weighs 800. I'm another 190. So you're talking about 1,000 max, and this will pull 2,500 pounds. If you get a pulley, which I have in the garage, you're doubling it to 5,000 pounds, so that's good enough for me. I mean, it's the old style metal chain. It's not synthetic rope, but I'm going to use it as is for a while, and then someday I'll decide to swap out the old style metal chain and put a synthetic rope in it, but for now it's fine. Two more items I forgot to review while I was outside, so I'll be doing this review inside real quickly. The EBS, the engine braking system, cuts on essentially when you let off the throttle. It's like a brake. Think about driving an electric car. I don't own an electric car, but it's very similar to the one pedal driving you hear a lot about. In that regard, there's, you know, the degenerative braking. It's kind of like that. I happen to like it. A lot of people, not a lot of people, a few people say it's too much. I like it. I've learned to use it to my advantage, and I hardly use the brakes quite as much. Just letting off the throttle will slow you down, not bring you to a complete stop maybe, but I actually like that. Other item is the EPS, the electronic power steering. I like that a lot too. It works really well, considering this is a four-wheel drive, 800-pound machine with big knobby tires. Steering is really easy. Again, there are a few out there who say that the steering is too light, especially at higher speeds. I personally have not noticed that. I like the steering. It works really well. I'm fine with it. I do know on some of the other manufacturers, they have like a low, medium, and high setting for the power steering. Obviously, more options are better, but I'm content with this. I like it. So those are all of my loves and hates, and the loves really do win out over the hates. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of gripey things. I don't understand why they released it with that incredibly flimsy front storage that is not dry, even though they call it dry. They did a great job moving the battery from so down low and bringing it up high where it's so much easier to get to. And yet they let all the mud and water splash right on top of it. And maybe that doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's just fine, but I just think it's a little weird. They could have done that front storage just a little bit better. And then the intake and the exhaust for the belt box. I don't know how that gets through engineering. I don't know how it gets through Q&A. Maybe people just don't care. I don't know. It's not for me to say. All I can tell you is it's a terrible design. If you look online anywhere, YouTube, anywhere else, the first thing people do is some form of mod, especially for the exhaust, because even if you're a pure trail rider, there's going to be puddles on the trails. I mean, it does rain in most of the world, maybe not in the desert and super arid areas, but it does rain, which means you're gonna go through puddles whether you want to or not. And that back tire is gonna kick up a bunch of junk, and it's gonna send it right into that exhaust. Now, when I went out and I rode for the first time, I pulled the drain plug on the bottom, and this is after my mod, and not a drop came out. So I was good. But that's it. That's my honest, open, quick review of my loves and hates of the 2021 Polaris Sportsman 570 Trail Edition. I do enjoy it. I hope it is reliable. I'd like to keep it for a while. And I'm heading back to Demon Run Trails in about a week and a half or 2 weeks.